This is a video recording of Rayner Ward, longtime Subud member, living in the Portland area. Rayner, can you start out by saying when and how you came into Subud?
Well, I found out about it in 1962, and I was opened January '63 with some couple of helpers. They were from Connecticut, and I was living in Waco, Texas, where I grew up, and these two people were there, and a friend of mine, my grandmother's cousin, who was 68 at the time. I was like 23 or so. Anyway, we were both interested in, quote, spiritual things. And so these people who, they were the helpers, were into a guru called Kirpal Sakji. And so it was about meditation, and we went and talked to them and everything, and we went and started doing this meditation. And so, but I noticed that in the house, we used to visit the helper people every now and then, and there was a picture, an oil painting on the wall, and it was like a sun bursting through the clouds with rays and all, but the sun was a Subud symbol, and really caught my interest. And I kept asking him, what is that? What is that? And the guy said, oh, okay, well, I'll tell you about it, and he started telling us about Subud. Well, I kept doing the meditation, but I wanted to be open and all. And so I got open as soon as I could. And then the meditation was just boring. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was really impressed when I got open, because something had been wrong with my eyes. And during the Latihan, the opening, my eyes started vibrating, really fast. And I was thinking, man, like there's no voluntary nor involuntary muscles that can do this. And then the next day afterwards, I was trying to do some homework. I was in graduate school, looked across the valley, and I noticed the day before doing the same thing, there were a bunch of equipment. I couldn't read anything on them and all, but this day, man, I could read all the letters real easy and everything, and my eyes got okay. So even though, a lot of things went down, in fact, I was all by myself after a while for 3 years. I would just, I felt like a fool standing in a room for 30 minutes with my eyes closed. But I knew, since what had happened, there was really something there. It was kind of something I sunk my teeth in. And so my best friend, and who was my college roommate, and my brother and my brother's best friend, they all got open too. And so we were doing Latihan, and it was in San Antonio, where we had to go from Austin. Is 90 miles away. So we were going 2 times a week. And then we went one time, and there wasn't anybody there except just 1 or 2 people. And they said, oh, everybody quit doing Latihan. And the guy who opened, he was a dentist, and he was the guy who was still there. He said, yeah, we're all doing hypnotism now. And so, well, I didn't really know much about that. But so after that, we were just on our own, and a couple of other guys got open, and my grandmother's cousin got open too, but she was all by herself in Waco. And one thing and another, I ended up in New York, and I was planning to go to England also with my best friend Nikos, who had gotten open too. And we both went to London from there, but he got passed on through. he was dressed real nice and everything, but I was dressed with huaraches and t-shirt and everything. I don't know where I thought I was coming from, but they kicked me out. I had to go back, and with my own money, I had to fly back to New York. So I thought, well, there was one thing I wanted to go to New York for too. I was studying with William Chin. I was always been into martial arts, and he's like a really fantastic guy. I think he's probably still alive too in New York. And but in the group was there, a great big group. So I started going to the New York group, and my Latihan, before I hadn't had any Latihan, you know, just by myself, like I was saying, but I started, I would bang my head on the floor and scream, you know, just, yeah. And then one day, Bapak came, you know, like he'd always did to go to New York and LA and everything. And during Latihan, somebody touched my forehead, and I stopped screaming and all. I never did that again. I figured, well, it was probably BIPOC, but I can't say it for sure because I didn't open my eyes and weren't supposed to. And so then stayed in New York for a while and a couple of years, and went to, BIPOC came back several times. And then when I was going to leave New York, I went back to Waco, and my girlfriend, who, you know, I'd met there in New York, she came to visit also. And meanwhile, BIPOC was going to Mexico. So by God, let's go to Mexico. And Frances, my grandmother's cousin, she wanted to go too. So it was Rohana and Frances and me. We all went in VW to Mexico. And, you know, we got to hear BIPOC's talks and do Latihan stuff with him. And then we went to Puebla too. BIPOC, we had a group that all went to Puebla. They were in a church back then. It's an old church. So I'm always been sort of like a reporter, you know. One reason I was going to go to New York, I was in Scientology in New York for a while just to see what it was like. And, you know, I found out it was a scam and everything. But I was always, you know, I'm not going to do what other people do or tell me to do. So I noticed that everybody, this was in Puebla now, everybody was lowering their eyes, you know, when BIPOC was walking down the aisle. And I said, I'm not going to lower my eyes. I'm just going to keep them open. And he looked over at me, and I went, you know, like that. I didn't do it on purpose. And, you know, so let's see, I went to finally ended up in California a little while after that. And BIPOC came to California. This was after, you know, he was in Mexico, he went to South America and whatnot. We got there, at least I just by myself, got there just in time in San Francisco to be there. And boy, that was wild too. I mean, I didn't know anybody there. So I got into this big hall, or wasn't the place where they were meeting with BIPOC, but there were tables and people were talking and eating and everything. And I saw this beautiful woman at this table with these really pretty children and all. And this guy was standing around the table talking to him and all. And wow, what a great scene. And then all of a sudden, these two guys ran up to him and they started, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were arguing and all. And then they all stood up. And one of these guys tried to kick the father, I'll call him the father, tried to kick the father. He just blocked it, you know, with an X block. And he tried to kick him again, and he blocked it again. And he just kind of said, come on, hit me, I'm your brother. And these two guys just stalked off after that. And so later on, in the hotel, I was talking with some people, and I said, man, that guy, he must really be a good martial artist, you know. And they said, him couldn't punch his way out of a paper bag, you know. It's like he just received how to defend himself or something. So
do you remember any of the names of the people you're talking about?
Yeah, but well, yeah, I guess it was so long ago. Well, okay, I'm an old guy now, so sometimes, it takes me a minute or two to remember something, but the same guy who, was seemed to be such a good martial artist, um, when BIPOC came to talk, it was like in a movie theater where it's higher up at the top where you're coming in, and then it kind of slopes down and everything to a stage. So BIPOC was just about to talk, and the guy whose name I can't remember right now ran down the steps, jumped up on the stage, and ran around and danced and everything. And he grabbed Usman's hat, the translator, grabbed his fez and put it on his own head. And boy, everybody was screaming, "Hey, get him out of here!" And other people were saying, "Yay, way to go!" And so it's really strange. BIPOC was just sitting there, just smiling and all. And and finally, what he did to the guy whose name I can't remember now was he actually stood on his head, in front of BIPOC for a while too. But finally, he left and went back and sat down. But so I ended up on the plane with him and going to Hawaii. And he was following BIPOC, who was going to Hawaii next, and I was too. But I ended up living there for a couple of years in Hawaii, and that's where I met my wife and all. So a whole lot of things. Well, I've written a book about this. I call it a novel, but it's really a memoir. It is in the first 7 years of my Subud life, from the time of 23 to 30. But in Hawaii was really a wild scene. I was there at first by myself, and Parker Mead was a really nice guy. He was a carpenter, and he and his family had moved to Mountain View, not where the flowers were grown and everything, but close to it. And he had goats and chickens and everything. And he kind of put me up for a couple of weeks. And we were doing Ladihan at Baron von Reich-Levinsky's place, which was real close to there too. He had a bunch of land that he had gotten from Deacon Company, I think it was. And so people in Subud were buying blocks of land, acres. You could get so many acres. And I got 5, but I didn't really have any way to pay for them or anything. But I was trying to make payments and stuff, But in Hawaii, a really good friend of mine he was a drug dealer, and he was kind of like, cooling it off, going to Hawaii. He got open there too, and that was really an amazing opening because Barron was like, late 60s, I think then. But during that opening, he flew up in the air and just wham, he just landed on his back, and big crash. And it's like, should have broken his back or something, but no, he was just fine, So my buddy Tommy, who just died not long ago, he stayed there, and we worked for the Baron. And my brother had come too, and he worked for the Baron too. And then after a while, Camille and I we left and went to LA. We left Hawaii because BIPOC was coming to LA, as part of it. And pull up everything and leave, and couldn't come back either, really. My brother sent my car with my stuff piled in it and shipped it over to me. But so we lived for a while in Los Gatos at her parents' house and everything, and we went to Ladihan at various places in the Bay Area. And then we moved eventually to Portland and lived there for, I guess about 4 years. Then we moved to Texas. And the reason we moved to Texas was because You know, we wanted to be in the Subud South Pioneers. That's what we wanted to be. So it was Ruslan Moore and Dr. Dan. Let's see, Dr. Dan, I think was, I couldn't remember his last name either. But anyway, we all moved there to, Ruslan was in Oklahoma City, and Dr. Dan was in San Antonio. And so after a while, it was 1975 or something like that. The Vietnamese came to Fort Chaffee in Arkansas, and so there's a big deal. You know, we could take the Subud Vietnamese people and make them into our group and everything. So Ruslan got about 12 people. He met this old guy that had all these houses. For years he had been buying houses and fixing them up and stuff, and he was tired of doing it. So he sold a bunch of houses to Ruslan with no down payment or anything, you know, and he moved his Vietnamese into the various houses that he owned at that time. And Dr. Dan and his wife, they did something like that. I'm not sure how they worked that out, but we had six Vietnamese in our house too, and we all lived in the same house. There was like a guy named An Nguyen and his wife, and a really sweet kid. He was about 20, named Wee. I don't remember his last name. And they had 3 kids. Let's see, yeah, because there were 6 altogether of us. And so we had a really good time. I thought, you know, we were the only people in town who ate organic food, because we were in a food buying group and with some other people, and we'd have organic rice and chicken and, you know, really good vegetables. And I even got work for them. I was been doing remodeling for a long time. So for a while they worked with me, but they didn't really know how to work, you know. And we were remodeling a house, a little bitty kind of guest house, and I was putting in sheets of paneling, and they were outside scraping the porch, you know, to get the excess old funky paint off, and so we could paint it, you know. And they An had a sander, and I'd be inside nailing up paneling, and I'd hear wait, and then finally I went out and I said, man, you can't just do that. You got to keep it going, you know, just keep it moving. Don't turn it off like that. And so the same thing happened, and I went out and again, and he was lying on my spread eagle, lying on my pile of paneling. And I said, hey, how about getting up so I can take another piece of paneling in? And he said, well, I'm so tired, you know. But anyhow, I guess this is kind of like bad mouthing somebody if I tell the rest of it, but I'll just tell it anyway, because a lot of those guys weren't really in Subud, I think, because, you know, they just disappeared when they and here's how the ones that were living with us did, is that they denounced us and to the Catholic services, saying that we were starving them and we didn't let them have much food. Hell, we were all making the food together, you know. And so and I confronted him and everything, and finally he said, well, you have to do, in my culture, you have to do what your ancestors tell you to do. And basically his father, who had gotten to California, had told him to get rid of those low-class people, you know, the poor people you're living with, and get a good sponsor, which they did. And it was an old friend of mine I used to go to church with, who was pretty wealthy at that time, and they were the new sponsors. And one thing about An, he was an incredible artist. Like while he was in Fort Chaffee, he had made all these little like little effigies and little wagons and things, just like he had one, where there was a little tiny goose hanging from the top of a cart where people sold food, and he actually made these things with styrofoam cups and shaving razor blades, and so they left, but the kid, he stayed with us, and we moved to Austin, and he still stayed with us. And finally, he said his his uncle in I think it was Minneapolis had given him a job. He got him a job as working in a library, and so he wanted to go up there. And we said, "Man, it's awfully cold."
My telephone answering machine just came on.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, I hear it. So he moved up there, and he called us a couple of times and said, "Man, I'm so cold up here." It was winter time, and I don't ever know what happened to him, but he was really a great guy, I thought. And so, let's see, before that, before we moved up to Portland, we had a lot of adventures with Ruslan, and went up there and helped him remodel some of his houses he had gotten. Oh, one funny thing too, he would go over in the wintertime to the houses that he had Vietnamese were living in, and they'd have the doors wide open and the heat on, full blast, and he'd close the door and say, "You can't do that." He was paying for the heat, for one thing. But it was really crazy, the whole thing of that. But after a while, we moved back to Portland, and there I met Marius Harold, and we became partners, remodeling partners, and we did a lot of work together. And Lateef Tinker, you ever know Lateef?
Yeah.
Oh man, what a great guy. And he's died, last 2 years ago or something like that. But Lateef was a brilliant guy that he knew from when he was a teenager. He had been building houses all by himself, and building houses to sell and everything. And so Marius did other work for a while somewhere else, and Lateef and I just worked together for a pretty good while. And then Hump, let's see. Well, oh, okay. We had, by then, Camille and I had 6 kids. And so, but we got a divorce too. And let's see, I don't know how to put that, but eventually, not too long after that, I got a little house, the one I'm living in now. It's 900 square feet, although I've added to it, but been there ever since. And so the kids, I wanted to get someplace really close, where the kids could come, and we'd have a salon every Saturday night, and we'd invite people that, a couple of people and all the kids, and we played music, and, we played games and everything. And oh yeah, another good friend too. He would always come as his name is Edwin. Now it was Haywood before. Edwin Spurgeon. Anyhow, I worked with him a lot too. Funny thing about Portland was so cool because it's almost like it was planned that way. There were just a whole bunch of us were into building, and we all helped each other out. It was like a confederacy where, if you have a job, I was the umbrella. I had the license, the most cheapest license I could get, just enough, to cover various things. But if you know, if you had a job by yourself, you just did it. If you needed two people, you got one of your buddies, and then started teaching my kids, and well, they got to be really good. Matthew, who lives in the free state of Matthew, I call it, because all these people are going there now, where he had found this place that houses were really cheap, but it was a great place, and it hadn't been discovered, and started buying up houses, and they have a whole block, you know, and even more now of houses. And now, yeah, some of my kids are moving there too. So we won't get to know our grandchildren or anything, but maybe we can go visit every now and then. And so, and I don't know, kind of run out of steam. What else would you like
So
to?
do you want to talk anything about your divorce, or why, or anything related to that?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I was going through a really hard time, and I guess she was too. And so we were at odds, and she wanted me to leave. You know, she wanted me to go somewhere else. And I was sleeping on the couch in the living room. And but she kept coming down late at night and rattling around in the kitchen, you know. I guess so. I mean, you have a bunch of kids, you don't have much time to do everything you want, but it really pissed me off because I was working every day, and I was really tired and all. And so one day I just got up, and I was so mad. One night it was, that I just wanted to beat her up or something, but instead I did a thing my dad did a lot, I guess. I just pulled off my belt and slapped her with it, and she ran upstairs, and so then it was really bad after that. And so I guess it was about a year later. I was sleeping downstairs on I put a sheet of 4x8 plywood on top of a table saw in the basement where I made cabinets and stuff, and I was sleeping on that with a sleeping bag. And so she got a cat, you know, that she didn't have. He'd run back and forth, and it would wake me up too. And I started going to Akoa, and I met this woman there. And after a while, we started sleeping together. And finally, she asked me, "Are you seeing somebody?" And all. I finally admitted it. You know, I lied a couple of times first and all. And so she kept trying to get rid of me, and I'd leave and I'd come back. And then the third time, I just finally didn't come back, and I started living in an old drafty house with a couple of friends that I'd met in Akoa and NA. And so that after that was when I bought this house here, you know. But actually we're still friends. When we weren't for a long time, because you know there's a lot of bloodletting for, you know, after something like that. And but like yesterday, we were partying down over at my daughter's Alethea's house, and having a really good time together. So that worked out like that. In the meantime, one of our kids, Michael, was killed. We don't really know how, but he kind of went crazy in a way, I guess. And he had to go to sort of a half-assed, I don't know what you call it. It's a place for teens, you know, in Portland. I forget the name of it now, but and it really kind of bummed him out, you know, a lot. We took him to another thing too is that Lusana Stokes and Hilda Harold and Lucia Marks, they had got this thing together in Montana, people buying land. We were going to have a Subud community. And so I would go out there every summer and spend as much time as I could building the house. Marius lived there then, and he and Hadrian Hubbard, they were working together. So they worked on it, I worked on it. And we took Michael there and trying to get him sort of sidetracked from wherever he was at. He was real bummed out, but he went, well, it was back in Portland that he didn't have any place to be. He was trying, Emil was living here at our house too, which is already really small. Oh, Holly, my wife, she lived, we weren't married then, but we were an item, and she lived here too. We lived together for 13 years before she agreed to marry me.
What's her name?
Holly Whitney.
Huh.
Yeah, she's out in the little house right now, made out of the garage. So, but Michael, he felt like he didn't, I started fixing up the little house so he could live there too, but he started living out in Forest Park. And we all, one thing we did, the kids and I and Holly, we did a whole lot of backpacking because Lucas, my firstborn, he had gotten a prize that he won that allowed him to be a wilderness guide, and all summer long he did that. So after that, I'd say, okay, Lucas, you find a place for us to go, and tell me how to go, and I'll drive. So, and we met some other people too. That a friend, a guy named Guile, a lawyer who I never would have met otherwise or anything, like kind of a high-class lawyer guy. But his daughter and Ariana, my daughter, first daughter, they got to be good friends. And Guile was like a super backpacker. We'd go to Olympic Peninsula. We went several times, 17 miles stretch on the coast and all, and Goat Rocks in Washington, all kinds of neat places, Indian Heaven, and we did a lot of that. So Michael was really good, wilderness, and he was just living like in the wilderness in Forest Park. And he'd come and, have dinner with us and stuff. And then one day he didn't show up for a while, and we don't know. All right, I have a friend who worked for the railroad. He told me a friend of his who's worked for the railroad was the guy who had found him. He had fallen off of a train, a boxcar. Those are like 2 stories tall, and broke his neck. And but it could have been that either he might have been pushed, but it didn't seem like he was the kind of guy who would fall. But the railroad guy said that there were a lot of kids, maybe not a lot, but certain kids would go down there and run around on top of the trains, in the train yard. So, I went to wanted to see his body, and they didn't let me in. And I said, you better let me in, man. I'm going to bust this place up. And so they finally did. And yeah, it was him. And he didn't have a mark on him except the back of his head. So they were calling it a suicide, which really bummed everybody out. How would you like to have it said your kid had committed suicide? And so Camille's dad, who's a fantastic guy and a super lawyer, he went, and he, raised some hell and everything, and they changed it back, made it to be accident at least. And so that was that.
This was Michael?
Michael, yeah. Yeah, he was really a beautiful, beautiful kid. He was 19 when he died. Like that. He'd been to college, and he hated it. And he took a bunch of pills, and it was winter evening, like he was going to commit suicide. But then after a while, he went to the clinic and told them, and they pumped his stomach. So you would have thought, well, okay, he didn't commit suicide. He could still be in school, but they kicked him out, and all that. That didn't make him feel too good either. They tried to get me to pay a bunch of money, and I said, he's dead, man. And I just hung the phone up, It left me with a sour taste in my mouth. And let's see. Okay, the Montana thing. Well, it worked really good for a while. It seemed like Lucia she had, this is when the first thing started to crack, but one of the reasons that she had a straw bale house built, Marius built that, and my house is a straw bale house, and Marius built another, him and Hadrian too. There were like 3 straw bale houses. One of them wasn't on our land, but Lucia's, one of the things she liked best about it was she would bring groups of gays out there, that she's a psychiatrist or a therapist, and they would have like seminars and stuff, and they'd walk in the woods. There's really beautiful woods around. But there was a nasty incident at this lake, it was a free lake, and some asshole came up and said, hey, you don't belong here, get out of here, and, ragging on them because they were gay. And so naturally that could have put a damper on a lot of people. Nobody wanted to come out anymore. And then she sold her house, because sort of ruined it for her. I think she might tell you other things, I don't know. Lusana, she had one thing that she really liked to do was she took this course with a guy named, was it Brown? I can't remember the first name of him, but he's a famous wilderness guide, and he had learned his stuff from some Indian tracker, and they, Lusana went through this course where they would, in the wintertime, they'd take you out and say, okay, you're going to have to spend the night here, and you better dig a hole, and they'd dig a hole, and then you'd have to put leaves all over yourself and cover yourself up and spend the night there, and there'd be spiders and things. And some people would just jump up and say, no, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore. But Lusana, she did it, and she got to be, you'd be walking along and she said, oh, these are grizzly tracks. Looks like they're about 3 days old. You can see how many twigs are there and the moisture, and she just knew all about the wilderness. So it was really cool to, to just hang out with her. We took a lot of walks and stuff. But Lusana's not there anymore, and Hadrian's not there. And he moved to town with Carola. And so we ended up being, little by little, there was just us, just Holly and me. And then we knew some people there that weren't in Subud, but they left, and it got to be where, the people who moved in just trashed the place. The part that Lusana really liked, to take people to see wilderness, they cut it all down, and for no reason, really, it seemed to me, just a tree here, a tree there, and then even then they moved away and somebody else bought that. And so we just, we have this house in Montana. It's really great. It's beautiful. I mean, I love it there, but it's not the same anymore. And I don't know, I'm thinking maybe I should get rid of it. I don't know what to do, kind of. But I stopped working when I was 67, stopped doing remodeling, and because I wanted to write a book. And I'd always wanted to be a writer from the get-go. From when I was a little kid, I wrote stories. I wrote a novel, well, call it a novelette maybe, when I was like 8 years old. It's the the ghost of the Red River Valley, I think it was, and I never had been there in Oklahoma or anything, but, and so I kept trying to write. I went to school in Vienna for 2 years and graduate school. And I started, when I was there, I had this idea about writing this novel where it took place there, but I never had time, seeing I just couldn't really, I wrote part of it and I just kind of saved it. And when I got to be 67, I thought, it's now or never. So all of a sudden, like I was on fire, it's just, I just couldn't stop working on it. And I'd work 10 hours a day sometimes, and I think it kind of hurt my eyes a little bit too, but I finished it and had it self-published. Ben Boyce is a kind of a computer genius, and he knows all about how to make, the covers for trade paperbacks online and stuff. And he did that part for me. I made the cover myself, but he actually, you have to have like a centimeter on each side or something. He could do that kind of stuff. And it was like trade paperbacks, you can only have 740 pages in them, and he crammed it in there, but it was like number 8 print, and it's too small for old people to read. So finally I had to turn it into 2 books, although there was a natural break right in the middle and it worked out pretty good. But the first book, it's like, it doesn't have that much about Subud. The second book is the one that really has more stuff about Subud. But the first one was about how we used to do peyote and did it kind of as much as we could. I'd researched it and everything. My grandmother was a real Whig. She studied with Paramahansa Yogananda when he was there in California with Francis, her cousin. And she had always had these magazines about things like magic mushrooms in Mexico and stuff like that. So I just read all of her stuff. Ospensky, I read books by Ospensky, and when I was 13 or so, and so I was really fired up. I always wanted something, like this, and but she always said, that's Subud, it's of the devil, but the BIPOC guy, he can tell the future. She said that stuff to me, and once she almost ate peyote. Francis did, I was just their guide. But my grandmother chickened out, at the last minute, but Francis, she went on a peyote trip too. So, but Francis, when she had got back from she got bummed out by the testing in Mexico when we went there. And she just didn't want to do Lottie Hunt anymore, but then she didn't have anybody to do it with either. So that was too bad. She was really a great person. She's, of course, passed on too. Yeah.
So do you remember the names of the people when you first opened, the people in Texas?
The ones who, well, yeah, they weren't doing Lottie Hunt anymore. In fact, they told us that we could open you, but we don't want to because we're into this meditation thing now, and we don't do that anymore. And they're the ones that told me to go to San Antonio, to be open and all. But I've got it in my book, all the names. The first book I made was, I kind of typed every page for it. And I went to this old guy named Walker. He's an old brother craftsman. He bound it for me and everything, but all the original names are in there. And but I changed all the names in my book because I thought I didn't want to hurt people. And
so are any of those people still in Subud?
Well, they would be dead, I think, unless they're 100 years old, you
Mm.
know. I haven't never heard from them again after that. And I just remember they were from Connecticut. And oh, he was in the Air Force, I think. And he was a specialist. And so that's why there was an Air Force base outside of Waco. That's why they were there at that time, fortunately for us.
So over the years, have you had any really kind of special spiritual experiences, either around BAPAC or just on your own?
Well, I told you about my eyes, you know,
Yeah.
and in Puebla, but I've been to a lot of BIPOC talks and like in New York and LA and San Francisco and all, but in Vancouver, BC, we went there, Camille, and took some kids. He was doing Sukum. Does that word mean anything to you?
Yeah.
It's where you go and up to BIPOC and talk to him a little bit, and I did that, you know, but that was it, really. I never did. I had a chance. In San Antonio, BIPOC offered to stop at our group in San Antonio right after I was open, but they were all saying, "Oh, it's too expensive. Here's a big party. We have to put them up, you know, to pay for hotels." And so they, you know, for that reason, and we were just newbies, you know, and didn't have any money, college students, and we just had to go along with the group. And so it would have been great because, you know, there only would have been about 20 people there with BIPOC. That would have been pretty cool. But one time I wanted to go to Indonesia, but, you know, my car broke down and my wife needed a car because, you know, the kids and all too. So didn't ever get to go to Indonesia. Probably would have just got sick, you know, from what I hear.
Well, you weren't going to drive your car to Indonesia, were you?
No, but I had needed the money to fix it up, you know, because it was a broken block, you know.
So how do you feel Subud has affected your life over the years?
It's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I don't have a lot to purify, you know, for that. I was heavy into drugs. I tried every drug there was. In New York, I forgot all about New York. I had a friend there who was like a fabulous musician, and he's a black guy, lived in Harlem, and his girlfriend was one of the original cast of West Side Story. They were, you know, both in Subud and everything. But he was a heroin user, and he turned me on to heroin. He was jumping all around, playing the sitar and this and that, and I was just sitting there looking at my shoes, and every now and then I'd go vomit, you know. And so I thought, well, you know, heroin isn't all that great. And so I tried opium one time. It was a lot of fun too. Just, you know, kind of make a paper towel roll thing with aluminum on top, smoking it over the stove. And DMT, a friend of mine gave me about a year's supply of DMT, which I did every day. They call it the businessman's drug. You know, it's like in a toke pipe, you know, you take one hit and it's like downtown LSD, bam, you know, everything going on, no buildup or anything. And I kind of bombed out of graduate school like that too, you know, because I went to one class totally stoned, and I made an A in the highest grade in the class. And I thought, wow, that works pretty good. So then I did the same thing in my Chinese final, and it's just like, you know, it just ruined it. I flunked that, you know. So that's when I quit school and went to Puebla and Mexico City after that. You know.
Mhm.
But I don't know, I thought those were interesting experiences, you know, drugs and all. I think probably the very worst drug is alcohol. I mean, everything shameful that I've ever done, it was, you know, I was drinking alcohol, but I went in Vienna. One night I met this girlfriend, and we were at a bar and met. I was talking to some German guy in German about philosophy, you know, and together we drank a gallon of wine. So went back to the house where we were living. We had this small bed, it was smaller than a single. And I threw up all over the bed and all over the floor, and I had a hangover for about 3 days, and that kind of cured me, you know, of alcohol completely. And so, you know, reach your bottom, they say.
Yeah. So over the years, have you done the Ramadan fast, or?
Yeah, I did Ramadan for about 23 years. I did it 23 times. And excessively, the first time I thought, oh, you're staying up, that's the thing that's really, really the best part. So I stayed up for about 2 days and nights too. And you know, it's a pretty wild. Ramadan was really a wonderful thing. But I think the 24th time I was trying to do it, I thought, again, it was like excess, you know. I thought, well, I'm just gonna, because I've done a lot of fasts where you just drink water for 2 weeks or however long it was, you know. I thought I'll just go a whole month like that. And I woke up one morning and I was standing between in the trance, and my head went bong, 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 like a bell, you know. I sank down to the floor. And so that kind of, after that, I didn't do Ramadan anymore. But I did it all those other times. And I'm glad I did too. Oh man, Marius and I and Latif, we would be working during Ramadan, and we think, gosh, you know, how can we do good work like this and all? But you know, we did our very best work, it seemed, during Ramadan too. And like, yeah, I highly recommend it, you know.
Yeah. Has Subud affected your relationships with other people?
Well, in a way, I think so, because I think it's made me where I listen to people more and talk less, you know, ordinarily now, instead of trying to let my ego dance, you know. It does kind of tone that down, it seems. But, you know, I know there's still, everyone has darkness and light in them anyway, but I used to have a lot more, you know, when people would piss me off or something, I would just have these visions of what I would do to them, you know, like stab them in the throat, slap them in the ear, stamp on their instep, all that stuff, you know. But not too long ago, guys insulted me. Holly and I went to, we went to take a walk, and we parked in a place we didn't usually park, kind of close to our house. But so I got out of the car, she was driving, I got out on the other side. This huge dog bounded out of a door towards me. This woman was behind, and I said, lady, curb your dog. And she did, you know. And so she said, and then we started walking away, and she said, well, you didn't have to be impolite. And I said, no, you didn't have to be impolite. And I just kept walking, and all of a sudden heard a flip, flap behind this guy saying, hey, you, hey, you. And finally he walks up to us, and I says, what? You know, and he says, I'd like to know why you're such an asshole. I'd like to know why you are such an asshole to my fiance. And I'm thinking, you got a fiance? And so he has on flip-flops and you know, he just keeps insulting me like that. And I said, have you ever been bitten by a dog? And he said, no. And I said, well, I haven't. He said, I don't want to hear your fucking dog story. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe he's a crazed vet, you know, it was in Iraq or something like that. But and I was thinking of all the ways I could waste a guy if I wanted to, but I didn't do it. And now I don't know why it was such a good thing. He wanted me to throw the first punch, and there were people all around. All of a sudden, you could see with their cameras, you know. It would all been on camera, and I said, okay, we're leaving. I don't know about you. So we just walked away, and I figured, well, now everybody in the neighborhood knows where this guy is at, you know, which was a lot better outcome than maybe having been charged with assault and battery and whatnot. And I think Lottie Hunt had something to do with that, you know. I mean, when you can do something, it may seem like a good thing, but you know, it's really not, and something keeps you from doing it, that's a good thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any more questions, but do you have any other stories or anything you'd like to tell?
Now, let's see. Oh, you know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to rag on Vietnamese, you know. In fact, who could blame them? You know, we destroyed their country. They were refugees. They came here, even if they weren't in Subud and saying they were, hell, we probably would have done the same thing, you know. And I hope they're having, you know, a good life and everything. So I just should add that, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know other things. No, I guess not, you know.
Okay. So do you have any objections to me posting this on YouTube for other people to see?
Huh. I don't know. I'm kind of leery of online stuff, you know. I'm not interested in Facebook or any of that other kind of stuff, you know. But who's gonna watch it? You know, Subud people, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
I guess it won't matter because just about everybody who, you know, would feel bad about it is no longer with us.
Well, thank you for doing it. I appreciate your sharing your story.
Okay, I hope I didn't screw it up or anything, but what? Well, if you could read my book, you know, there's more stuff in there about it.
So what's the name of your book?
The first one is Epiphany, and the second one is, the first one is Advent, the second one is Epiphany.
And are they available like on Amazon or YouTube or?
Well, probably Amazon, lulu.com, which I don't recommend anymore, but that's the one, you know, that self-published it. And it's on, I think that you can still get it from lulu.com or Amazon.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. I'm going to close out the video right now.
Okay, well, thank you, Rockman. Thanks for giving me a chance to blow it out.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Friend of mine, Merslin McMillan, who's now deceased, he's probably about my age, and he was the first guy who I really got to know in Portland, and So when we heard BIPOC was going to go to Skymont, we wanted to go, and so Lucas, firstborn, he was like, I think 4 months old, and so we went in Mercelin's VW, just a bug, and there was Camille and Lucas and Mercelin and me, and we drove from Portland to Skymont in Virginia, and we would just stop when we couldn't go any further and just pull over the side of the road, and then there'd be mosquitoes and everything, you know, to wake you up in the morning. And we got there. And so all of a sudden, there was my friend Tommy and Dooley, his wife, and Tommy hadn't done Lottie Hunt in years. We had been in Hawaii together where he got open. But we were all living in the haunted house, they called it. And it was this old frame house, and they, you know, all the locals said it was haunted, and it was just pretty funky and everything, but we were sort of living up in the attic. And so nobody was doing any dope or anything at that time, but this guy who I knew in New York too, and he's a guy that Lucas had said once, when this is skipping ahead, that he had said, oh, so I have to tell this part too. He asked me, he says, after Lottie Hunt, Lucas was there and I was there. And this guy, Robert, he says, are you still doing that Tai Chi? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, it's just, no, it just really ruins my Lottie Hunt. It's like, it's distracting and whatnot. And no, I'm not doing Tai Chi while I'm doing Lottie Hunt. So Lucas looks at him and says, still crazy after all these years. And so then back to Skymont, he ran up into the attic in the haunted house, and he said, see what you've done, it's terrible. And what, you know, we're just sitting around. Oh, somebody had some incense, you know, they were burning. And he said, yeah, one of our people were out there and in a car and ran into a ditch and got hurt and everything, and it's all your fault too. And we didn't know why it was all our fault, you know. But he was a guy who in New York, when he was open, he ran backwards all the time in Lottie Hunt and never bumped into anybody or anything, which was pretty remarkable, that kind of thing. But so we, you know, we did Lottie Hunt with BIPOC and heard talks and all that. And on the way back, Mercelin was kind of a wild hair in anything he did. But he was driving through Walla Walla, and we didn't go on the main highway. And he got stopped. He was going like 15 miles over the speed limit. And so there we were in the courtroom, and he was arguing with the judge, man. And the judge, while he was lifting his hammer, and I said, wait. I said, I'll pay the fine. Whatever it is. He says, well, okay, you know. And so Mercelin didn't go to jail, and we were able to go back. We were still in his car, you know. So I guess can't think of much that happened in Skymont. It was really wild. They were like walking women around, women helpers were walking them around like a horse that's just been in a race, you know, and you're cooling it off. There'd be about 4 women just guiding this person, you know. People were, I'll tell you, in the early days, there were people really flipped out a lot of times. It was pretty wild. It doesn't seem to happen like that, as far as I know, much anymore. That wasn't much of a Skymont talk, I guess, but anyhow, it was impressive for us.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I can't think of anything. Maybe some New York stories, but I have to think about it. New York stories would be in my book anyway,
Okay.
or the Skymont one wouldn't.
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording again.
Okay.